So should we crack on? Thank you so much for joining us. And obviously Cheltenham is edging closer.
Yes.
So the talks of the battle between the Brits and the Irish is to be dominating headlines. Obviously, looking at last year, Ireland took 23 out of the 28 prizes. The Brits obviously have to come back fighting hard. However, a lot of people have said that perhaps this is a year when they do have a chance because of Constitutional Hills, Trombone, Edwardstone, obviously Shiskin, and a number of other horses. What do you think, having seen most of these horses run at some point this season? Have the Brits, is there enough for the Brits, or will Ireland dominate for another year?
Yeah, I think that the power balance will take a while to correct itself because of the fact that, you know, the good horses that the Irish trained last year are simply either moving up from novice company to open company and they're still as dangerous, or the horses that won, you know, big races last year, Honeysuckle and A Plutard and Manila Indo. Obviously A Plutard finished second, but those horses still have, you know, really good chances.
Yeah.
And also you factor in the handicaps as well. The Irish do tend to be able to get their horses into handicaps and are a little bit more dangerous than some of the English horses that run in handicaps. So I think it will take a while to address that balance because it was such a huge difference.
Yeah,
I think we can expect to see, you know, the continuation of that, but, you know, hopefully this year there'll just be a few more, you know, horses for the English that, you know, we haven't really seen them at their full potential.
Yeah, exactly. Perhaps it can be a little bit more even than a complete sort of washout. And obviously it's not just the horses, it's also the trainers. So the British versus the Irish trainers. It's been a bit of a struggle this year for some of the really good trainers. Paul Nicholls, even Henry de Brumad have not had as much winners as perhaps they were expected to. Again, sort of judging from what you've seen and with your experience, who do you think may take the top prize when it comes to trainers? Will they bounce back?
I think that the Paul Nicholls and the Henry de Bromhead thing is probably that more has been made of it than perhaps there should have been, really. You know, Paul Nicholls wrote on his blog that he wasn't particularly happy with the way that his horses had been running over a sort of a 2-week period. In that time. Like, he had still had a couple of winners, but he just wasn't certain that they were all firing in the way they should have been. Obviously we've still got, you know, 4 weeks till the festival. That's plenty of time for people to put things right. If it is something as simple as, you know, I think in Paul Nicholls' case, he felt that the hay didn't have as much calcium and potassium in it as it should necessarily have had. You know, that's if you've managed to figure out that that's the problem, you know, that's fairly easy to rectify. With, you know, things like additives and stuff that you can get from feed merchants. Henry de Bromhead's form was perhaps, you know, a little bit below par, but he had, you know, the most phenomenal season the year before. So you're comparing it to him being firing on absolutely every single cylinder that there possibly could be.
Absolutely.
You know, that's a very hard thing to continue you know, doing year in, year out. I think they'll still be pretty dangerous when they're going into these big festivals. You know, Brave Man's Game, for example, was a perfectly acceptable winner over the weekend. He ran a really good race. And I think that Henry de Bromhead has been pretty happy with his results. Honeysuckle obviously being you know, a horse that does a lot of winning, and you know, she is still well able to win at the Dublin Racing Festival. So And then of course you factor in people like Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott, Nicky Henderson.
Yeah.
You know, those trainers are still as dangerous as they ever have been.
Yeah.
And I think Henderson probably goes with a slightly better hand this year than he did last year.
Yeah. No, but I guess it's like you're saying as well, the media always likes to make out like there's a disaster somewhere, or something big has happened, and the next thing it's, one thing leads to another. But no, absolutely. So going on, like the Dublin Racing Festival, as you were mentioned, and also Newbury last weekend, based on the horses that you've seen there, who are you really looking forward to see at the Cheltenham Festival? Who do you think will?
So I'm a really big fan of Brave Man's Game. I think that he's a horse that since moving to fences has been, spectacular. And I think the fact that he ran in a handicap and gave away so much weight and still won really concisely. He didn't really look like he was in trouble at any stage of the race. There were plenty of them still in the race, jumping the second last and the last, but he just put them away quite easily, really. I think he was giving away £16. That's a lot of weight to give away. Sure. And he still did that fairly readily. Interestingly, Willie Mullins said at the Dublin Racing Festival that Facile Vega was the horse that he kind of enjoyed watching the most. Yeah. And I'd be inclined to agree with him. I thought that was quite a sort of spectacular performance, really. The bumpers are a little bit tricky because, of course, you haven't seen a huge amount of them. They normally only run a handful of times, but this is a horse that looks like, he's really exciting for sure.
Great. And obviously big headlines on Shiskin, and obviously he came out on top last time at Ascot. Has he got what it takes to win again?
Yeah, certainly. His Cheltenham form is very good. Yeah. You're factoring in plenty of decent performances at Cheltenham and at the festival. He's well able to, clearly likes the course. That's a big plus. He's well able to deal with, enormous crowds and things like that. Something that I suppose as they get older gets less important anyway.
Yeah.
The match between himself and Energumene was obviously, fantastic. It was fantastic for racing. It was fantastic to have such an important race away from the festival as well. I think that's good for national hunt racing. And Chacun Pour Soi came out at the Dublin Racing Festival and was brilliant.
Yes.
But obviously, I think they're gonna have to train him in a way where they're sort of factoring in the fact that he doesn't really seem to like to travel to England. So Willie Mullins said that he'll try to leave him a little bit short of work because the travelling over on the ferry almost seems to kind of push him a little bit over. So he's hoping that if he just leaves him a bit short of work, then the ferry will do what the ferry does to the horse, but he shouldn't be too tired from that. Which I thought was a really interesting insight into kind of how you have to factor in all these things like travelling. I do think that Shiskin has got absolutely every chance of keeping his crown.
Yeah. No, great. Yeah, and talking about Willie Mullins, so obviously he's gonna Appreciated's gonna run the same race as Honeysuckle. Obviously he has not raced recently. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a risky game, not to have any runs before such a big meeting, or is this?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly unconventional, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not something that we see on a very regular basis. And going for a race like that, first go in open company
and big company.
And to be honest, in a way they kind of got nothing to lose. If you finish second to Honeysuckle, no, everyone's going to be on Honeysuckle bandwagon. She's a sort of fan favourite. So
she really is.
They've got nothing to lose in a way, and everything to gain.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's not, it's not ideal, but I probably wouldn't really doubt anything that Willie Mullins did, if I'm honest. He's clearly a master of his craft, and if that's the decision that him and his team have come to, I will be really interested to see how he goes. I think that particular category needs a little bit of a shake-up. Honeysuckle needs something. I felt that the Dublin Racing Festival, she needed that horse to kind of come with her after the last, for her to really show, her how good she is.
Yep.
I thought she looked a little bit. The race was won at the last, and it's just a case of basically cantering home after that, and just felt like she would have almost shown herself better had she had something just chasing her down a little bit. And I'll be really interested to see. Me personally, as a fan of racing, I want to see a newcomer in that sphere. I think it'll be really interesting.
No, definitely. Great. So Neil?
Yes, let's talk true legends of the sport. Let's talk Tiger Roll. So this year, Tiger Roll goes for his 4th win in 5 years in the Glenfarclas. And his odds are shortening at 4-1, and with some bookies certainly shorter. Do you think Tiger Roll can get another win at Cheltenham, or do you think Prengard might spoil the party potentially?
Yeah, I mean, Prengard is a really nice horse. There's no getting away from that. And I've gone back and watched those runs over in France, and they're good. Won a listed last time out, and the French, as we all know, have a lot more cross-country racing over there, so his experience will be pretty vast, really, when it comes to jumping all the different fences. My only concern, I suppose, for Prengard is that if you go back and watch Tiger Roll win last year, there's the speed throughout the race is a lot quicker, whereas Prengard's races, I mean, especially the last race he ran, he made the running, and you can kind of see they sort of set off a little bit slower, and as the race develops, obviously they go quicker, but they don't hang around in the cross-country races. They're very intense. Riding, you've got 10 fences a mile pretty much, and that would be my only concern, is that that particular horse, he tends to go a little bit slower in the beginning of the race.
I think I'd agree. Like, if you watched Tiger Roll last year, he had almost 2 wins, and he started and finished incredibly well. We all know his going speed is incredible. If you don't think Prengard wins, do you think, have you got your eye on any other horses that might stop him?
Yeah, obviously it's interesting that Easy's Land has been moved. He was previously trained by David Cottam, now moved to John Joe. McManus is a big supporter of John Doe, as we all know, and I wonder whether he just wanted to sort of send over a nice horse. I think the other horse that actually really does pique my interest would probably be Ajaz. He's got really, really good form over there. He's won grade 2s, grade 3s at Auteuil. His worst run really was when he finished 7th in the Grand Steep, which is basically their cross country, I'm sure, their Gold Cup, I'm sure you know, where he was beaten a long way really by a horse that he'd already beaten. So for whatever reason, to me, you could kind of make a case for the fact that he just ran a bad race that day. You know, he'd already beaten Dr. de Ballon in a grade 2 previous time, so it made no sense that his form would sort of dip like that for any other reason than something had sort of was amiss. He would be an interesting horse for me. I think if you're going on the basis that Tiger Roll is in the same form and will run the same race as he did last year, then he's going to be a hard horse to beat. If for whatever reason, you know, age is caught up with him, or he's just not quite in the same form as he has been in previous years, you know, I think there are other horses in the race that are potentially really interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Going back to Newbury this past weekend, I think Sky Pirate was definitely heavily fancied for the Betfair exchange, but rather flattered to deceive, and I think he was last. And he was priced 8-1. He's now lengthened to 16-1 to defend his grand annual next month. Do you think, Eldorado Alan, who won this weekend also, he's the same price as him. Do you think Sky Pirate is still really good long-range value for Cheltenham?
Well, I suppose value only is valuable if the horse goes and wins. You're looking at it from the perspective that, you know, yeah, he could be good value, but only if he's able to beat the horses that are sort of shorter in the betting. You know, you have to be able to. He's run respectable races this year. He's just struggled, I think, to get on terms, but he's struggled to get on terms with, you know, nice horses. I suppose if you look at Brave Siska, that horse is much shorter than him in the betting. I think it might be like 8-1 or something. But, you know, will he be able to turn around the form from Warwick? You know, potentially not. You know, there's nothing that really happened in the race that would make you think that if something had happened differently, then he could have beaten that horse. So for me, obviously you've got course form, you've got festival form, but
I suppose do you think he can rise to the challenge, basically, knowing he won last year?
Potentially, but you know, so you know, there are much more fancied horses in the field. Yeah, I mean, you could easily go. I love going each way on a big price when I think I've found value. So yeah, I mean, you would have to think about it, but I think you can make a case for a lot of horses in that particular field.
Great. So obviously another favourite is a Plutard. So what do you think we're gonna see from him at the festival? Will he get it this year? Is he strong enough?
Yeah, his run over in Ireland when we saw him last was very good, and you have to really say that basically Galvin kind of I don't know, the way the race panned out, if anything, our Plutard kind of got the best ride.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that a couple of the race moves that Rachel made almost hindered Galvin.
Yeah.
But Galvin still managed to overcome them to win. And that, I suppose, would put you firmly in the Galvin camp, really. I think our Plutard is a nice horse, but this year, to me, it just seems like there are a few more horses in the Gold Cup that are going to be a bit more problematic.
Yeah. And
bearing in mind that, you know, he obviously finished second last year to Minella Indo. I think there's slightly more in the race this year.
Yeah.
That could trouble him.
Yeah. Because Minella Indo is obviously not gaining as much interest this year after a few not as great races as I guess people would expect.
Yeah.
But it's obviously our time will tell. But last time we spoke, you mentioned Galvin, and we said that, you said that, you know, it seems like he's been around for a long time, although he's not very old. So, but he always seems to be sort of second, third, fourth, but never really get the big ones. Is this maybe his time then?
Yeah, I think to be fair, like I really like Galvin, and like you said, you know, I sort of feel like he's been around forever, you know, because he's always there, you know, he's always at the big meetings.
How old is he?
And he's only 8.
Oh, 8. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for me, I like him a lot. I think he's a really nice horse, and he runs, you know, fantastic races. And his win last year in the, oh god, it's supposed to be the 4 miler, isn't it? There's not the 4 miler anymore, I think. You know, that was a very good run. You know, he's got fantastic form, and I just sort of think, like, for me, he's just sort of one of those horses that, I suppose I think he's probably improving at even this stage.
No burner, maybe.
I do really like him. I thought the ride that David Russell gave him, like I said, last time, I slightly felt like he didn't get the rub of the green throughout the race, and especially in the closing stages of the race, he kind of had to come wide, and you know, he could have won by further in. If I think he probably could have, he would have looked more dangerous had those little things not happened. And what's ended up happening is he's sort of stolen the race, really. But I think had those little things not happened and he'd had a clearer run in the closing stages, it would have been a slightly more decisive win. So I think he's sort of almost, he's unflattered himself, whatever the opposite of flattered would be. You know, he's made the performance looks worse perhaps than it probably was.
But I guess that over the years, like he has been a very consistent horse, and you know, definitely not one to write off. So Rachel Blackmore, obviously, again grabbing headlines, much thanks to what happened last year. However, she hasn't been as strong this season. But again, it's a little bit what we're saying about Henry de Broomhead as well. Like, you're coming in and you just having so much success. Like, is it actually feasible to continue that? You know, perhaps it isn't. But in terms of her mindset going into the festival in, 3 or 4 weeks time, do you think she's feeling as positive, as sort of geared up, or is it a little bit more, you know, nerves perhaps playing because she wants to, I guess, meet everyone's expectations, perhaps more than her own?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about Rachel is that she doesn't really get, or she doesn't get all drawn in with the media. She's very much keeps it at arm's length, and I think that's probably, you know, quite a strong thing about her.
Definitely.
So I don't think there'll be outside pressure. I think there's inside pressure from her own expectations of how she wants the week to go, you know, how she feels that the horses will perform. But I don't think she'll be thinking, you know, crikey, I need to make sure I get plenty of headlines this year. You know, that's not the way that she works. And that's a strength, because if you're worried about the outside perspective, you lose focus on what is actually happening. You know, if she's riding horses that are running really, really well, they're running good races, but you know, she's finishing second on them all. Yes, it would be frustrating, but she'll know the horses are running as well as they can, and she'll know she's riding as well as she can. And actually, when it comes down to it, it is the festival. You know, you're not going to get away with horses running bad races, you know, and winning. If they're running good races and she's riding well, that's all she can do. She has got a couple of really big horses to look forward to, Honeysuckle obviously being one of them. You know, there will be pressure associated with that. She's aware that it's a fan favourite. She knows that, you know, people will be wanting her to win, but you know, there is only so much that she can do, and the pressure that she puts on herself will just be the same as any other athlete in any other sport, and won't have anything to do with the media.
No, great. Right,
Neil?
So
we touched on briefly Sky Pirate, how his value has rather lengthened quite a lot. Are you looking at any other horses that might be good outsider tips?
Yeah, so I had a look at the Stayers hurdle. Obviously we had a very peculiar performance by Pacey Park on trials day. But for me, I think the horse I took out of it was actually Liz Oscar, who set
I'm writing these down, by the way.
Yeah, set really good fractions in front, made it a proper test. And ran a really good race to finish third himself. I think that actually this Stayers hurdle is quite deep. You know, there's plenty in it that's quite exciting. You've got Time Hill, Pacey Park, Flooring Porter, Classical Dream, and that's, you know, I've only mentioned a few that off the top of my head. You know, it's a seriously good race this year, and probably a little bit more complex than some of the other championship races that we've got. So, you know, it's quite stupid, I suppose, to pick an outsider for a race that is so complex. But actually, I did think that Liz Oscar put a good effort in on trials day, and obviously he's won the race before at big odds as well. So yeah, for me, like, if there was any horse really this week, because I think the handicaps, you know, you're slightly at the whim of how people have either exposed or unexposed their horses. But the championship races, I think that the Stayers race is the race where you can find some value, and I think Liz Oscar could well finish placed in this renewal.
I'm very glad you mentioned Paisley Park. I mean, do you want to briefly comment on that incredible performance a couple of weekends ago?
Yeah,
what was it, 15 lengths behind, I think it was.
Yeah, to be fair, I think one thing that has to be said straight away is the connections of Paisley Park never lost faith in him. They were always absolutely adamant that they could get him back to the form that he'd shown previously. And I think everyone just sort of said, oh yeah, of course, and, you know, thought there's no way you'll get him back. And they were right. You know, that performance was something I was actually working at Cheltenham that day.
It's legendary. I've never seen anything like that.
No, and probably won't again. It was a really, really interesting performance. The only thing that for me is a bit problematic is the fact that in an interview afterwards, Aidan Coleman said to Tom Stanley on Racing TV, he's sort of been thinking about this, pulling a little stunt like that at the start for a couple of starts. And if he does it again, I know Liz Oscar set good fractions in front, but you've got Classical Dream and Flooring Porter, who are both very much front runners and really won't hang around. And I just slightly worry that if he does pull the same stunt again, he won't get away with it.
Yeah, if it's a stronger field, you mean?
Yeah. I thought really the person that did the best job with Paisley Park on that particular day was the starter, whose reaction to Paisley Park not starting was very, very quick and got him going again. It will be difficult when there's a bigger field. If the same thing happens again, hopefully he doesn't do it again. And I'd love to see him win another Stayers hurdle. But my only problem is I just feel he's a little bit tricky, isn't he? He's a little bit of an enigma, and I wouldn't trust him with my money.
Very good. So just to finish it all off, so for you, a good chance to win, or a winner in the Gold Cup, the Champion Chase, the hurdle, the novice, and the Stayers hurdle, who would you go for?
So I thought what I'd do with this question is I was just going to literally answer straight away. That's
exactly. That is perfect.
Second answer. Yes. So I went Gold Cup Galvin, Champion Chase Shiskin, Champion Hurdle Honeysuckle, Supreme. I had to give it a little bit more thought, but I think I can stick with Dysart Dynamo.
Yeah.
Just because the Supreme is Willie Mullins's race. You know, you've got to pick a Willie Mullins race, of course, for that race. And all I've written for this day is tricky ! Because it is tricky. I kind of I like Flooring Porter a lot, but I've just kind of got this question mark hovering around him. Is he going to be one of those horses that provides like an amazing performance one year and then kind of we haven't really seen it again? He's fallen. I think he's unseated. Yeah. Obviously, he finished second to Classical Dream, but then that form kind of went a little bit haywire when Classical Dream then got beaten 4 lengths. Into 4th. When he came out the next day, odds on.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't really know. I find the Stayers Hurdle probably the most interesting race of the week.
Quite open at this stage.
Yeah, but then I really like Classical Dream. I love his attitude to racing. Like, he loves it. Like, even when he won that Supreme, like, what was that, 3 years ago? Must have been 2-3 years ago. And like, he broke the tape at start because, you know, he's got his head down and he's just literally trying to like bulldoze his way.
Yeah.
And I just think that's brilliant. I just love it. I think it's great. And then of course you've got all like Time Hill, Paisley Park, Cigar Oscar, all those sorts of horses as well. Oh,
it's a lot of potential, but no obvious winner.
No,
I suppose if there was one horse that you would put your money on, who would it be?
Well, you see, I look at it from a different perspective. If there was one horse I could ride in that race,
yeah,
I probably would go for Classical Dream.
Very good.
I like him. I love his running. I love his racing style.
But as you were saying,
Willie Mullins is the man to prepare them for the big days. I don't really know what happened when he finished 4th that day. I wonder if he possibly went a bit. I can't quite remember. That's the problem. I can't remember anything. I think he might have gone a little. Something went wrong anyway. It just nothing quite worked out, I think, on that day. So I maybe would not read into that form as much as maybe I should. But yeah, I think if I could ride one horse, I'd ride him.
Brilliant. I think this is really good. Thank you so much for speaking.
That's all right, no worries.
And yeah, I'll be in touch with you again very soon.
Fab, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lizzie.
Bye. Bye.